Bhitanam Shatagopamunishwaram Shri Ranganath Shatakopayatindradrishtam Lakshmi Nasamma Shatajit Karunaikapatram Shri Rangavira Raghurat Shatakopahridyam Vedanta Deshikayatindramaham Prapadye Srimad Ranga Shatharizamyamivaral Labdhagamantadvayam Srimad Veera Raghudvahadhi Shatajit Padara Vindashrayam Srimad Vedavatam Sadeshikayate Karunya Vikshaspadam Seve Rangadhurina Shasanavasham Narayanam Yoginam Vedanta Deshiketi Shakatakshalabdhatrayantasaram Anavadya Gunam Budhagryam Narayana Jyeti Dhurya Kripabhishiktam Sri Ranganatha Yeti Shekaramashayamaha. Mama, screen share pantama mama. Again, I'm going to share my screen now. I just have one quick request for everyone. If you can, just try not to make markings on the screen or to scribble anything on the screen. So that'll be great. If you can, that'll be great. Thank you. So welcome everyone. Welcome to yet another session of Shri Ahobila Mutt's storytelling that we have been doing over the last few weeks. So today we are going to see the story called Shandili Vruthantham. So Shandili Vruthantham is may or may not be a story that you have heard about before. So maybe let me start with this question: how many of you have heard about the story of Shandili Vruthantham? If anybody has heard, just raise your hand. Okay, nobody. Okay, that's fine. No problem. We'll go through some of the details of the story. It's actually a very simple story. It's not a long story. It doesn't have too many characters in it. It is a short story, but it has a lot of meaning related to it. And in a way, we are going to learn something more about Bhagavata Kainkaryam, how we need to behave with Bhagavatas and so on. Okay, so if you remember 3-4 weeks ago, Purnima Aunty was talking to you about Ambarisha Charitram, right? So can any of you tell me what was the main moral of the story from Ambarisha Charitram?
Nothing. The moral is that we shouldn't get angry at everything.
Okay. Anything else?
We should not do Bhagavatam.
Exactly. That's very good. So one of the main sources, we should not get angry, is definitely one of the main morals of the Ambarisha Charitram story. But again, the core reason why whatever happened to Durvasa happened was that Durvasa did a Bhagavata Pacharam. And what is Bhagavata Pacharam? Bhagavata Pacharam is basically when there is someone who is a devotee of Perumal, and we think badly of them, or we say something to them, something that we should not be doing, then Perumal is not very happy. So, and then what happens as a consequence of that is what the story of Ambarisha Charitram told us. But today Shandili Vruthantham is going to tell us something similar, but we are going to explore some more angles about Bhagavata Pacharam and try to, at the end of the day, we'll try to understand a little bit more about why Bhagavata Pacharam is bad, how we should behave, and all those things. Okay. So last week we saw a story of a young boy, right? We started the story of a young boy who went to school. Shandili Vruthantham starts with the story of the young boy who graduated. Okay, well, a lot of us have just finished our school graduations. Similarly, the Shandili Vruthantham also starts with the story of a young boy who graduated from school, and the whole thing starts with his graduation. And when this graduation happened, what questions he was asked, where he went, that's where the story begins. So in a way, there is a link back to what we were talking about yesterday. It's again about a student. Now, before we go into the story, we have to ask again, like we have done in the past, one second. What is the story of the story? Okay, in the sense that where is the story coming from? What is the core text from which we take the story? and that will tell us a little bit about the context in which where the story came. Okay, so the story is found in the Mahabharata. Okay, so Mahabharatam and Ramayanam, these two. Can any of you tell me what is the name given to Mahabharatam and Ramayanam put together?
The great epics.
Sorry?
The great epics of India.
Itihasams.
Itihasams. Okay, Itihasams. The Mahabharatam and Ramayanam are called Itihasams. They're called Itihasams because they tell us about their core purpose is to narrate some stories that happened in the past. And Mahabharatam and Ramayanam, in a way, the idea behind writing Mahabharatam and Ramayanam is very similar to the idea behind what we are doing now, right? We are sitting together, listening to stories about Perumal. We're listening to stories about what happened in the past as a way for us to take away some messages, right? So Mahabharatam and Ramayanam, in fact, came up with the same purpose. You tell people a few stories, and through those stories, you understand how we are supposed to act, how we're supposed to behave, who is Perumal, all those things, right? So our sessions today are very similar to why Mahabharatam and Ramayanam were written. Mahabharatam, in fact, is unique because Mahabharatam has this distinction. There is a saying which says Bharataha Panchamo Vedaha. Bharataha Panchamo Veda means what? How many Vedas exist? Do you know how many Vedas are there?
4.
Four. Vedas. Okay. And what are the names of the 4 Vedas?
Rigveda,
Samaveda,
Samaveda, Yajurveda, and
Excellent. Okay. Okay. Now, how many pages are the Vedas? How big are the Vedas?
Perumal wrote them, and then he gave them to Brahma to for them to have protection, and then Asuras stole them, and then
Okay.
Perumal took Matsya Avataram and took them back, and
So what does that tell you about how big the Vedas are? The one thing we should clarify, Perumal did not write the Vedas. Okay, Perumal, as you said, Perumal gave the Vedas to Brahma and to use the Vedas to create the world and all this. But Perumal is not the author of the Vedas. But from all of this that you've told me, so tell us again. So how big are the Vedas? Vedas, actually, you can't even measure how big the Vedas are. The Vedas are huge. Okay, so Mahabharatam has the distinction that it is called the 5th Veda, or it is considered to be the 5th Veda. Okay, so if it is the 5th Veda, what can you say about 5th Veda? So how big do you think the Mahabharatam is?
It is really big.
Mahabharata, exactly. So Mahabharatam is also huge. Mahabharatam, we can fill like years and years of storytelling sessions based on the stories that are there in the Mahabharata. There are thousands and thousands of stories. Each story has a message for us to take away. Okay, so then you could ask me the question: look, there are thousands of stories in the Mahabharata. Why are we talking about this one particular story, Shandili Vruthantham, right? So the reason we are talking about the Shandili Vruthantham story is, who's the person in this image? Do you recognize the person in this image?
Swami Desika.
Vedanta Desika.
Excellent. Okay. So Swami Desikan has taken out of all the stories of Mahabharatam, Swami Desikan has written a lot of books, right? So in one of his books, Swami Desikan has referenced this story. Okay. And he has said that this story is an important way for us to understand a few messages. Okay. So that is why we are going to see the Shandili Vruthantham, and we are going to try to understand what message Swami Desikan wanted to give us through this Shandili Vruthantham. Okay, so far what you should remember is Shandili Vruthantham comes from the Mahabharatam, and of all the stories in the Mahabharatam, Swami Desikan thought that this particular story is the most appropriate story to give us the message that we are about to hear about. Okay, so then, as with all stories, we need to know what the main characters in the story are, right? So there are some main characters and there are some smaller characters. Okay, so the story starts with Narada, because Narada is the one within the Mahabharatam. There are a lot of the stories in the Mahabharatam are narrated by one or another person. So in this particular case, Narada is the one who is narrating the story. Okay, the person who is narrating the story to is Duryodhana. Okay, and where does this happen? The story is narrated by Narada to Duryodhana in the part of Mahabharatam which is called Udyoga Parva. Okay. Now, why is the Udyoga Parva relevant? It is in the Udyoga Parva. I'm sure you all know the main story of the Mahabharatam, right? So before the Kurukshetra war happened, okay, somebody went to the court of Dhritarashtra as an emissary. He went carrying a message saying, "Let us not go to war. Let us make peace with each other. We don't want to go to war." Who was this person who went with this message?
Krishna.
Krishna.
Lord Krishna, right?
Krishna.
Okay. So what happened? Krishna went with this message to Dhritarashtra, and they all agreed, okay, we will not go to war, and the story finished there. Correct? No, that's not what happened. They did not listen to the words of Krishna. Krishna said, "Do not go to war. It's not going to lead to any good for you." But they did not listen to Krishna, and they still wanted to do war. Okay. So before Krishna left from Hastinapura, sage Narada came there. Okay. Sage Narada came there, and he took Duryodhana aside and he said, "Look, Krishna is giving you a valuable message. He is saying, don't go to war." Because we all know, at that time they did not know this, but we all know how the war ended, right? How the war ended for Duryodhana, how the war ended for all his brothers. We all know that. Narada was telling them, "Look, I cannot tell you, you are not likely to know the future, but if you listen to the words of Krishna, you will be better off." And more generally, he was saying, if somebody tells you something, listen to it. If a good person, somebody in a position who you know that they have knowledge, that they are good people, if they tell you something, don't keep on saying no. Okay. And Narada says to Duryodhana, "Look, let me tell you a story of somebody who kept saying no, who did not listen to the message of somebody else who was telling him something, and see what happened. If you want the same fate to come to you, then go ahead. But if you want to avoid that, then listen to what Krishna tells you." Okay. And Narada narrated this story. Okay. The characters in the story that Narada narrated are sage Vishwamitra. He's one of the characters who come in the beginning. And there is this person who you don't know. He had his disciple called Galavar. Okay. Galavar was the name of the disciple. Okay. That is the other character. Then the other character who comes up in the story is Garuda. Okay, Galavar and Garudan go out on an adventure, and a lot of the story is about the adventure that Galavar and Garudan had and what they learned in that adventure. And of course, what is the name of the story we're talking about today? Shandili Vruthantham, right? So obviously, Shandili is also a character. Okay, Shandili is the person who is a character in the story. Okay, so the main characters, the person narrating the story is Narada. The person who is listening to the story is Duryodhana, and the people within the story that Narada is narrating is Vishwamitra, Galavar, Garudan, and Shandili. Okay, so these are the main characters. You'll see some other small characters come and go, but these are the main characters who you should remember in the story. Okay, now going into what is the story. So Narada, as I was saying, I was giving some valuable advice to Duryodhana, and the context is that Krishna was telling these people not to go to war, and Narada's main worry was that Duryodhana is not listening to people. Okay, so when we come to at the end of the discussion, when we come to the moral of the story, remember all this context, because then I'll try to ask you some questions around that. Okay, now for the story that Narada told Duryodhana. So this Galavar was a disciple of the great sage Vishwamitra. Galavar, so back in those days, disciples used to do what is called as Gurukula Vasam, right? Do you know what is Gurukula Vasam?
They stay with the guru. They don't like, it's like a boarding school kind of thing.
Right, exactly. Good. So it's like a boarding school, right? So you stay with the guru. It's like a boarding school, except that you live with the family of the guru, right? So you have to do all the chores that the guru asks you to do. You serve the guru, you serve the ashramam, you serve your fellow students, and do all those things. So Galavar was a good disciple to Vishwamitra, but Galavar was not a very wealthy man. He did not have a lot of money and all those things. And over a long period of time, Galavar learned several things with Vishwamitra. And at the end of at the end of the period of his study, Vishwamitra said, "Okay, this is the time you're graduating, and so I've taught you whatever I need to teach you. So off you go." That's what Vishwamitra told Galavar. Okay, so that's why I was saying before that the story starts with someone's graduation, right? So Galavar said, "Okay, thank you for teaching me everything, but in those days there was a rule that if you learned something from a guru during doing your Gurukula Vasam, and when you finish the Gurukula Vasam and when you go, before you go, you have to offer something to the Guru, because after all, the Guru has taught you something very valuable, right? He has spent a lot of time with you. You have spent a lot of time with him. So you have to express your gratitude. You have to express to the Guru that you're very thankful for what they have done. And most of the time, Gurus don't ask for anything, right? So you're supposed to go and ask the Guru, what can I give you? What can I offer to you as a mark of my gratitude? Okay. So does anybody know what that is called when you offer something to your Guru as a mark of your gratitude?
Guru Dakshina.
Guru Dakshina, excellent. So Galavar went and asked Vishwamitra, please tell me, O sage Vishwamitra, tell me what can I offer you as Guru Dakshina? Vishwamitra said, look, I know you don't have that much money. I know you don't have that many resources. You have served me when you were here. That's why I was saying, right, that when you're doing your learning, you have done a lot of work in the ashram. I gave you a lot of chores to do. You've done all those things. That is enough as my Guru Dakshina. I don't want anything. Galavar said, no. The Vedas say you have to give something to your Guru. So I have to give it to you. Vishwamitra said, look, trust me. I know why I'm not asking you for anything. You can't give me anything. You don't need to give me anything. Galavar kept persisting. He said, look, no, I have to give you something. No, you have to ask for something. And when Galavar kept persisting and asking again to Vishwamitra, Vishwamitra got a bit angry. He said, look, I'm telling you something that I don't want a Guru Dakshina because I know your circumstances. I know that I don't want anything at this point. So why are you persisting? So he got angry, and Vishwamitra said, okay, if you insist so much that you want to give me something, here is what I want. He said, get me 800 horses. Okay. 800 horses is not that hard, right? There are lots of horses. You can get 800 horses. And maybe Galavar said, yeah, that's okay. I don't have money, but maybe I can take a loan and get the 800 horses and all those things. But Vishwamitra was angry, right? He said he didn't want a Guru Dakshina. So he wanted to make it difficult for him. He said, look, I don't want any 800 horses. I want 800 horses who are all of them, they have to be as white as the moon. Okay. Okay, 800 white horses. Okay, it's a little bit harder than 800 random horses, but you can get 800 horses. Vishwamitra didn't stop there. He said, I want 800 horses that look white, that are white, but I want one of their ears to be black. Has anybody seen that kind of horse? I have not seen that kind of horse. Right? So Vishwamitra said, I want 800 horses. I want all of those horses to be white, but they each has 2 ears, right? I want one of those ears to be black. That was the requirement. Galavar thought, okay, I'm done for. He understood, okay, I should not have kept persisting. My Guru said, I don't want anything, but I kept asking him for this. So I think I made a mistake. But he was very depressed, right? Because what do the Shastras say? The Shastras say that if the Guru asks you for something, you have to give it to them. That's one of the reasons that Vishwamitra was resisting asking anything. Now that he has asked him for it, it is Galavar's duty to provide that to his Guru. There is no option but to provide. Now, where will he go for these 800 horses? These 800 very special horses, right? Now, if you keep going and looking, I don't think anybody has seen those kind of horses. So he was very depressed. He thought, okay, I have completely failed in my duty as a student. I've made a major mistake. I don't think I'm worth anything. He was extremely depressed. Okay. Now, when we are extremely depressed, a few weeks ago, Kannan Mama was telling us about Sharanagati, right? If there is something that we cannot achieve, if we think that there is something we need, but we don't have the ability to get it, we don't have the strength to get it, then what should we do?
You shouldn't commit to
Ask
get.
Paramal.
Yeah,
Yes,
you
sir.
shouldn't commit to get it. You're right, but he is already now committed to get it.
Perumal.
Exactly. So he should ask Perumal. Okay. So again, what Galavar did was he did Sharanagati at the feet of Perumal. Okay. He went to Perumal and said, hey Narayana, I have made the mistake of persisting with my guru when he did not want something, but he has asked me for something impossible. So please, can you help me get it? And he did Sharanagati at the feet of Perumal. So what Perumal did was he sent to him one of his most senior devotees. So Perumal sent Garuda to Galavar, saying, okay, Garuda, go help Galavar find these horses, right? Because Galavar is somewhere. If you have to go travel the length and breadth of the whole world to go find these horses, you need somebody who moves very fast, right? So that's why he said, okay, Garuda, go to Galavar and go help him. So Galavar came to Garuda and said, look, Galavar, I'm your friend. I will make sure that you get what you want, and let us set out. You and I will set out. Let's go and look for these horses, 800 horses, white horses with one black ear. So Galavar climbed on top of Garuda, and they went east, they went north, they went south, and they went to all kinds of places looking for these horses. It's not going to be easy, right? We know it's not going to be easy. So what happened was Galava and Garuda in their journeys, they went to this island called Rishabha. Rishabha was the name of this island. Okay, they were just taking a break, right? They're on this huge, there's a very long trip, so they had to take a break to take some rest and so on. So they went to this island called Rishabha. This Rishabha was this island where our main character Shandili lives. Okay. Now the question is, who is Shandili? Shandili was a great bhakta of Perumal. Okay. She, through her penance, okay, she had very strict acharam, and through her penance, what she was able to do was she was able to get very close to Perumal. Perumal was very happy with her. Shandili was very happy with her service to Perumal, but she lived in this island. Okay, this island, this Rishabha island was somewhere in the middle of the ocean. Okay, it's basically it's not even an island. It's just basically a mountain that's there in the middle of the ocean. Okay, it's not close to any temples. It's not close to any major Divyadesams. It's not in like a place like Indralokam where there are a lot of devas who are praying to Perumal. It's just basically middle of nowhere. But Shandili's penance was such that even in the middle of nowhere, she was able to get very close to Perumal. She was very happy with her penance. She was very happy with the way she was praying to Perumal. So one fine day, this Galavar and Garuda reach the Rishabha island. So Shandili takes very good care of them. So she took care of them. She gave them food. They rested, and they had a nice meal. And Garuda and Galavar went to sleep. Okay, they woke up the next morning. When they woke up the next morning, Garuda was in for a rude surprise. When Garuda woke up the next morning, what had happened was he woke up to find that, okay, Garuda is a bird, right? Garuda is a bird. He has wings. He has a lot of feathers. The wings and the feathers and all these things help him fly, correct? But Garuda woke up in the morning and found that all his feathers had fallen away. His wings had gone away. He was like a bird that had no feathers, no wings. I think a modern day example would be like a penguin. Like penguin can't fly, right? And it doesn't have very big wings. It has no feathers. Garuda had turned into something like a penguin. Okay, Garuda, who was supposed to fly very high, was supposed to fly very fast, very long distances, he suddenly found that all of his power to fly and everything had gone away. All he had done was he came to this island of Rishabha. Shandili took very good care of them, and Garuda and Galavar went to sleep. Galavar got shocked. He said, "Boss, you were going to help me find these these 800 horses, and suddenly you cannot fly. How long are we supposed to stay on this island? What happened? Tell me, something wrong must have happened, right? Suddenly you go somewhere and you don't feel well in the morning. You eat something, go to sleep. You don't feel well in the morning. What is the first question you ask? Say, okay, what did you eat? What did you do wrong? Why have you suddenly fallen sick, right? So Galavar asked Garuda, what happened? Why have you fallen sick this way? Why have all your feathers fallen away? So Garuda said, look, I don't know what happened. And Galavar said, no, it may not be something you ate, but what happened when you slept? What were you thinking when you slept? Okay. And Garudan said, I didn't think anything major. All I thought when I was going to sleep was, this Shandili is such a great Bhakta of Perumal. This Shandili is serving Perumal. She seems to be very good. Perumal seems to be very, very pleased with her. How sad it is for her that she is somewhere in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of an ocean. She's in this mountain which is not close to any Divyadesham, it's not close to any Indralokam, it's not close to Perumal, it's not close to Triparkadal. How nice it will be if Shandili comes to a much better place. She's in this place that's not so good. So it'll be nice if she can be in a better place and serve Perumal. Garuda said, that's all I thought. And I went to sleep and I woke up in the morning and I seem to have lost all my power. Okay? So that was what Garuda thought had happened. Okay? So Garuda had actually been punished for thinking that Shandili was not in the right place, or she was a great person, but why is she in such a bad place? Why shouldn't she be moved to a different location? Okay? So that is what happened to Garuda. Now I have a question for you now. So what do you think Garuda should do now?
Pray to Perumal.
Go to Perumal.
Okay, that's one answer.
Shandili. Yeah,
Sorry, say that again. Sorry.
it's Bhakta Avacharam, not Deva
Yeah.
Avacharam.
No, Garudan has to go to Perumal because he did Bhagavata.
He has to. He has to.
Okay, so one answer is Garuda has to go to Perumal because he did Bhagavad Avatar. Okay. Any other answer?
He has to.
Since he thought about Shandili in his sleep, shouldn't he go to Shandili?
Yeah.
Good. Excellent. So this is what Garuda did. We'll talk about what he should have done, but this is what Garuda did. Garuda then went to Shandili and said, look, last night when I went to sleep, I was thinking about you. And I said, look, you should go from, I was sad that you are in this middle of nowhere type of place. And you should move to some other nicer place from where you can do Kainkaryam to Perumal. And Shandili said, okay, I really don't want to be anywhere else. I have got this position of being close to Perumal. I have got this position of being a Bhagavata just by virtue of my own penance. And my penance is such that I want to be in this middle of nowhere island. So please don't expect that I can do better by going anywhere else. Wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I am happy in my relationship with Perumal. So you don't think of me going somewhere else. Okay? So I understand why this happened to you. And Shandili said, I forgive you. Okay? So Garuda said, that must be my mistake. So please forgive me. And so he went to Shandili and said, please forgive me. So Shandili said, I forgive you. And I hope that you get back all your power. So immediately what happened was Garuda's wings came back, Garuda's feathers came back, all of those things came back together, and he got all of his strength and he was able to fly again. You have a question?
Did Garuda do a Bhagavat Apacharam?
Awesome question. Right? So that is what we're going to discuss. There are going to be lots of questions. Your first question is that, right? Okay, so good spot. So that should be the first question. Did Garuda do any Bhagavad Apacharam? So we have to discuss this, right? We need to understand why we think that Garuda did Bhagavad Apacharam. Because one side of things could be, he didn't think anything bad. He didn't say anything bad about Shandili. He was just feeling bad for her that she could do a lot better if she's in a different place, right? He said, I could help Shandili by taking her to a different place, right? That's not an apacharam, right? Does anybody here think that that's an apacharam? Well, clearly,
Well,
clearly.
would it be an apacharam because Garuda was thinking the better of Shandili, but Shandili didn't agree. So would that count as doing something bad to a devotee? To a
Right.
Bhagavata?
So if you say that's a good possible answer, but let's take a counter example, right? Or let's take a day-to-day example. We go to the temple, okay? We see a Bhagavata who looks hungry, okay? And we feel, oh, the Bhagavata seems to be hungry. Why don't I offer him some food? Right? Maybe he's hungry. He looks like a Bhagavata. We should offer him some food. That's the kind of thing that Garuda did. Is that wrong? If you see Bhagavata is hungry and you want to offer them food, it's not good. It's not bad, right? That's not bad. So what clearly, okay, since Garuda got punished for it, there must be some apacharam, right? So what is the apacharam? Does anybody have? I mean, there's virtually no wrong answer here. So if you can think of any idea, please don't hesitate to raise your hand.
What do you mean? Like, is it like he forgot to thank Shandili for treating him, or like?
Maybe, but they had not left, right? They could have decided to thank her on their way out. Still there.
Not Adian, Kuretarvar, when he lost his eyes because of the Chola king, he thought that he lost his eyes because in Kanchipuram he saw someone and he thought that Tiruvanchi Charnam was Konal, so that's why he says he lost his eyes.
Right. Okay, but that's a different example, right? In that case, I mean, whether Kuretarvan actually did that is a different debate. But to say somebody's Tiruman is Konal is a little bit of a negative connotation to it, right? Saying, okay, we could have done your Tiruman more straight, not Konal. In Garuda's case, he didn't say, oh, Shandili could be he could have done bhakti to Perumal more better. He was in fact marveling at her bhakti. Any other answers? It's an interesting question, right?
Maybe because Perumal puts everyone where they should be, and you shouldn't have any question about that.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I think you're getting warm. So I think the core apacharam that or quote unquote apacharam that Garuda did was, he said, Shandili has so much bhakti. Shandili is here. He thought, how could I make her situation better? How can I do something to make it better by taking her from this middle of nowhere island to a much better place, right? So there was an angle in Garuda's thinking saying, I am able to help, or I am able to make a difference to this Bhagavata. Okay. So in the example that we talked about in the temple, right? This Bhagavata who is hungry and we are offering them some food. The way we should think about it is as a service to them. Perumal is instructing us to give up, to offer some food to them. Now we may offer the food to them. They may say, okay, I want it or I don't want it. But we should remember that even when we say a Bhagavata needs some food, the question of I should not come into the mix at all. Okay. That's why whenever we talk to each other, we try to avoid the use of the word I, right? What do we use instead of the word I?
Adian.
Adian, exactly. So we should try our best to not only just use the word. So what does the word adian mean? Literally, what does the word adian mean?
At your service.
Servant.
Right? What does adi mean?
At your service.
Right. At your service is the implication of the word, but adi means feet, right? So when we say adian to some other Bhagavata, we are saying, I'm at your feet. I would like to serve you, right? So what Garuda should have done was, even if he felt that Shandili could be in a different place doing a different Kankariyan to Perumal, he should have gone to Shandili and said, how can I be of service to you? How can I make you have so much bhakti to Perumal, you're doing so many things for Perumal. How can I contribute to that service and see if I can do anything for you, right? So there was a very subtle difference in the ways Garuda thought. Garuda thought, oh, I can make Shandili's life a lot better. Similarly, in our example of the Bhagavata in the temple, we shouldn't say, oh, this guy is hungry, I can make his life a lot better. No, he is a Bhagavata, right? So we should say, how can I be of service to them? How can we serve them so that Perumal will be happier with us? So that was the apacharam that Garuda did, okay? So it's a little bit of a difficult concept, but the core thing for us to remember is whenever we deal with a Bhagavata, okay, the concept of I should not come. It's not we are not doing anything. If we do anything, it is because Perumal is giving us the strength to do it. If we are doing anything, it is because Perumal is giving us the thought to do it. So when we deal with the Bhagavata, we have to approach it always with the word adiyen, not with the word I. Okay, so that is the thing to remember. Yes, any questions on that?
Does it count as like an apacharam if he made like a little mistake by including I in his thing? I mean,
No, yeah, okay, that's a good question. I think it's not just about using the right words, right? It's about the thoughts that go behind the words.
also Garuda was selfless, but at the same time, he wanted to do his own thing instead of her doing herself.
Correct. And he thought he could do something, that he had some independent ability to make her life better, because you should always remember that we are at the service of Perumal, and we are also, more importantly, we are at the service of other Bhagavatas. So when we deal with other Bhagavatas, we should always think of us as being their servants rather than helping them. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so that's not the only question that comes from the story, right? There is another question that is supposed to come. That is this. The person we are talking about is not somebody, right? It's not talking about, you're not talking about us. We're talking about Garuda. Yeah. Garuda is supposed to, sorry, somebody had a question? Okay, sorry. So the other question that you can ask is, how is it possible that Garuda can commit Bhagavata Bhajana? Because Garuda has been serving Perumal eternally. Garuda lives in Sri Vaikuntham, where no aspect of wrong thoughts can enter their heads. How is it possible then that Garuda can commit Bhagavata Bhajana? It's not like us. Yeah. You had an answer?
Yeah, so does it even matter if you're a holy being like a Nityasuri to do any apacharam? Does it matter?
Good question. Yes, that's partly the question that we're asking here. Does it even matter that you're a Nityasuri if you do an apacharam? So Swami Desikan gives us answers to both these questions. First is, it does not matter. If you are a Nityasuri, even if you are a Nityasuri, okay, if you do Bhagavata Apacharam, that is not acceptable. Okay, so there is no hierarchy between Bhagavatas. That if you are a Nityasuri, you can do Apacharam, but if you're not a Nityasuri, you cannot do Apacharam. Okay, so that is one answer. The other thing is, Nityasuris obviously do not commit any apacharams, right? We know that they're very pure. Nityasuris are the definition of being pure. They don't have any bad thoughts at all. So to that, Swami Desikan says that this is Perumal enacted this drama for us to have this discussion, to understand the story, take away some morals from the story. So you shouldn't take it literally that Garuda himself had some bad thoughts. Perumal planted this in Garuda and created this scenario so that this message can be given to us. But the important message is, even if you are Nityasuri, even if you are a much older Bhagavata, even if you know a lot of things, even if you have read a lot, that doesn't mean that you can commit an apacharam to any other Bhagavata. Right? So Garuda, I mean, literally taken, Garuda would not do this apacharam. Perumal created this drama so that we can have this discussion. But in theory, even if you are a Nityasuri, if you do Bhagavata apacharam, that is not acceptable. Okay? So the message to us, obviously, we are never going to be Garuda, right? So maybe it really doesn't matter. But it does matter to us because in many ways, we may think that we know a little bit more than some other Bhagavatas. We may think that we are closer to Perumal than some other Bhagavatas. What Swami Desikan tells us is that none of those things matter. If you are dealing with a Bhagavata, always treat them as your superiors. We are not superior to any Bhagavatas, okay? That is what the scriptures also say. All Bhagavatas should treat each other as their own superiors, okay? Every Bhagavata treats other Bhagavatas as their superiors, okay? Then, the next question. If you have to treat every other Bhagavata to be a superior, then you need to know who a Bhagavata is, right? How do you know? You see somebody walking on the street. Do you know if they're a Bhagavata or not? You don't know, right? So that is a question.
You can tell if they're a Bhagavata if they like, if they're like, so basically, if you see a guy at a temple praying to Perumal, you can say that they're a Bhagavata, or if they're like in public, if they're wearing a veshti or a tirman, you could say that they're a Bhagavata.
Yeah,
I
those are
guess
good answers.
wearing a Tiruman like kind of identifies you're a Bhagavata of Perumal.
Yeah, yeah. All those answers are good answers, but the real answer to that question is it's very difficult to tell who's a Bhagavata. Okay, somebody, and we're going to see some ways to identify them, but the message I would like you all to take away from here is it's not very easy, very obvious to identify someone who's a Bhagavata. So it's safe to behave as if everybody is a Bhagavata. Okay, there are some exceptions, of course, but anybody who says the name of Perumal, anybody who thinks about Perumal, they could be Bhagavatas. Okay, so you can't expect that they know a lot of Vedas, that they have read a lot, or they are very senior. All those things doesn't matter. So even a kid who's playing with you, who's younger than you, if you think that he knows Perumal's name, he says Perumal's name, he could be a Bhagavata too. Okay, so that's something to bear in mind. So there's no easy way to identify who is a Bhagavata. They don't come with any label attached to them. Okay, so we have seen a lot of some subtle concepts, difficult concepts, right? And we'll come back to this question again. Okay, it's time for us to do a quick quiz, okay, on the concepts that we have learned here. But the quiz is a special quiz. The theme of the quiz is Alvars, okay, because a lot of Alvars have told us the Shandili Vruthantham is a story in the Mahabharata, but a lot of Alvars have told us a lot of things relating to this concept of Bhagavata Pacharam, how we should treat Bhagavatas, where we should, how we should behave with Bhagavatas, all those things. Okay, so we have a quiz that is to do with what Alvars have told us about Bhagavatas. Okay, the first question: which Alvar's name suggests that he is a servant of Bhagavatas? Okay. Yes.
Periyar.
Okay, somebody said Periyar. No, that's not the right answer. Sorry. Exactly, Tondaradi Pudiyarvar. Okay, so this Alvar's name itself suggests that he is a servant of Bhagavatas, right? Tondar Adi Podi means I am the dust of the feet of Tondar. Tondar means Bhagavata. Okay, so if you are the dust of the feet of a Bhagavata, means that you are a servant of Bhagavatas, right? That you are very humble towards Bhagavatas. So this Alvar, just even in his name, he gives us a message that we should be humble towards Bhagavatas. We should not do Bhagavata Pachar. Okay, so Tondaradi Alvar, and in the Tirumalai, he explicitly, in fact, he talks about a situation that is very, very similar to this Shandili story. Okay, in this Pashuram, I won't go into the details of the Pashuram, but he says, even if you are otherwise a very great person, even if you know a lot, even if you are very learned, if you make the mistake of doing Bhagavata Pacharam, Perumal will not give you credit for being a great person. Not a very, like Garuda was a Nityasuri, right? In this drama that Perumal created, Garuda was a Nityasuri. That seniority doesn't count for very much if you do Bhagavata Pacharam. Okay, so even if it's a little child and you think that you're older than that child, when you're playing, you should be respectful towards them because they are also Bhagavatas. Okay, and who better than Tondareddy Priyalvar to give us that message, because his name itself suggests that he is a servant of the Bhagavatas. Okay, so that was the easy question. Now we have a little bit of a difficult question. There's no negative marks for not knowing the answer to this question. Okay, one of the Alvars declared, Adiyargal Yentamai Virkavum Peruvargale. Okay. Now, not knowing the answer to this question is not a big deal, but does anybody know the answer to this question? What this line means is, if I'm a devotee of Perumal and there are other Bhagavatas, those Bhagavatas are my master. I am a servant of the Bhagavatas, and I am a servant of the Bhagavatas to the extent that if they sell me for something, if they sell me for money like a commodity, right? Like if you have a bag of rice, you sell it for $10. Similarly, if they take me and treat me like a bag of rice and sell me on, that's fine too. Okay, let me give you a clue. The clue is that this Alvar, we just celebrated this Alvar's Tirunakshatra.
Periyarvar.
Periyarvar.
Vishnu Chitra.
Okay.
Periyarvar.
Periyarvar, Vishnu Chittar, this is the Alvar who said this. Okay, so he said, and he's going to answer this question of, partly going to answer the question of how do we identify a Bhagavata also. Okay, so he said this, like, if you look at this verse there, the last line says, Adiyargal Yentamai Virkavum Peruvargale. Okay, but then we have this question, okay, who are these Adiyargal? Who are these Bhagavatas? So he says, anybody who says the name of Perumal, they could be Bhagavatas. Keshava, Purushottama, Kilarishodiai, Kuralai, and Peshuar. Peshuar means anybody who speaks. They don't even need to be very learned. They don't even need to be, they could be a little baby could say the name of Perumal, right? So anybody who says the name Keshava, he's a Bhagavata. Anybody who says the name Purushottama, he's a Bhagavata. Okay? And anybody who thinks of Perumal, they could also be Bhagavatas. Okay? So we should not expect that Bhagavatas come with a lot of credentials, that they should have a lot of degrees attached to their name. Okay?
I
So
have
that
a
is what
question.
Periyarvar said.
I have
Sorry,
a question.
you have a
How
question?
do you know whether the Bhagavata is thinking of Perumal or not? Like if
Bhagavata doesn't need to be thinking of Perumal at that point, right? But he is a Bhagavata because he does think of Perumal generally, or he thinks of Perumal even at times. Because remember that the chance or the bhagyam to think of Perumal's name doesn't come that easily, right? There are so many billions and billions of people in the world. How many people think of Perumal's name? So you must be really unique, because Perumal has given the opportunity for you to say his name. Perumal has given you the opportunity to think of him. That gives you, remember that you must have really good credentials if Perumal has given us that opportunity, which means that Bhagavata is super great.
Okay.
So they don't need to be thinking of Perumal at that moment when you're interacting with them, but they may be thinking of Perumal at other times. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we talk about Periyarvar, we have to talk about his daughter, right? Who was Andal.
Andal.
So this is the last question. This question is identify the Tirupavai. Okay. In the Tirupavai, there is a verse in which Andal talks about how we should treat Bhagavatas. Again, this is not an easy question. So if you don't know, that's totally fine. But does anybody remember it? Okay, so Andal, because she is Periyarvar's daughter, right? Periyarvar has just told us how we should behave with Bhagavatas. She tells us in the 15th Pasunam of Tirupavai, which is this Elle Ilangaliye Pasunam. Okay, this Elle Ilangaliye Pasunam, I think is supposed to be, and this again tells you, this is a good example, tells you how much importance we place in our own sampradayam about Bhagavatas. This Elle Ilangaliye Pasunam is considered to be the heart of Tirupavai, because it gives us the message about Bhagavatas. Okay,
And it's the middle, right?
so there is a line here that says Vallirgal Ningale Nane Danayiduga. Okay, so if a Bhagavata, suppose we have a discussion with some Bhagavatas, right? And at some point the Bhagavata says, okay, what the Bhagavata says to us, what you have done is wrong, or I don't agree with you, you have made a mistake. What should we do? Should we argue with the Bhagavata and say, no, what I did is right?
No, we should
You are
try to
wrong.
correct our mistake.
Andal says, don't do that. When you go to the Bhagavata and Bhagavata says that we have made some mistake, the only thing we should do is, even if in the heart of our hearts we think that we have not made a mistake, we should start by saying, Adiyen, I am sorry. It must be my fault. And then we go back and think, because most of the time, you must have seen this happen in school, you must have seen this happen with other people. You go back and think about some conversations you've had. When you go in the heat of the moment, you might get angry with the other person. But when you go home and think about it, you might say, you know what, maybe they had a point. So what Andal tells us, start with that. When you deal with Bhagavatas, they say you've done something wrong. You start by saying, sorry, you must be right. It is my mistake. Okay. So when we treat Bhagavatas, from all these things, what we should remember is that Bhagavatas should be treated with a lot of respect and a lot of love. Because just because of the respect, you shouldn't stay away from them, right? All these stories shouldn't say, okay, you know what? You go to Bhagavata, Garuda lost his wings. In this small story we talked about, you go to the temple, you offer Bhagavata some food, maybe that's a mistake. That's not the message you should take away. You should love Bhagavatas. We should want to serve them, but always be humble about serving Bhagavatas. Always be humble about interacting with Bhagavatas. Okay, and who's a Bhagavata? Anybody could be a Bhagavata. And Nammalvar, obviously Nammalvar, who's the senior most of all Alvars, also says that, and he goes to the extent of saying in this Pasuram at the end where he says Adiyar, if you see on the third line, right? He says Adiyar, Adiyar, Adiyar in Kokkal. It's not just Bhagavatas. It's Bhagavatas. It is people who serve Bhagavatas. It is people who serve Bhagavatas. We should be respectful to all of those people. Okay, so Bhagavatas and anybody who is serving them should be treated with respect and love and humility by us. Okay, so that is the main message of this Shandili Vruthantham story. Obviously, now look, that story is not finished, right? Galavar has not found the horses, correct? We have still left Galavar and Garudan and everybody on that Rishabha island. So let's go back to that story. So what happened was Shandili blessed Garudan. Garudan realized that what he had done was wrong, and they set out on their mission. So Garudan and Galavar went to a lot of places. What happened then was Garudan took Galavar to some kings. So he went first to this king Yayati, who said, "You're supposed to be one of the biggest kings of that time." He said, "Do you have these 800 horses?" I said, "No, I don't have 800 horses. But I have my daughter, please take her, and then maybe that will change things." They went to another king. He said, "Look, I have 200 horses of that description." Somehow they managed to find a king who had 200 horses. Said, "Okay, you know what? I need 800. I'll at least take the 200 and keep going and finding another one." So they went to one more king who gave them another 200. They went to another king who went to 200. So with all these travels, they were only able to find 600 horses. How many horses did Vishwamitra ask for?
800.
800.
800.
800
So
horses.
Galavar came back, brought all these 600 horses and came to Vishwamitra and said, "I have tried and tried and tried again, but I was not able to find the 800 horses. I was only able to find 600. Vishwamitra said to Galavar, "Aha, I knew that only 600 horses of this kind exist in the world. There used to be 1,000 such horses. 400 horses were too old and they died. Only 600 horses remain in the world. I deliberately asked you for more horses than there actually exist of this kind because I wanted you to learn a lesson." That lesson is that if the Acharyan tells us something, if the Acharyan says, "I don't want any Guru Dakshina," then you say, "Okay, fine." If the Acharyan says, you've served me in whatever way you need to serve me, I don't need anything more, and don't worry about it. Okay? Yeah, there's a question.
Wait, but you mentioned that that Guru Dakshina is a practice in the Vedas, and our first priority is to listen to the Vedas. So, like, Which is the most important?
That's a very good question, and I gave a small inkling of the answer to that question before. Does anybody remember what I said? Vishwamitra said, "It's fine. You don't need to give me anything, right?" And when Galavar persisted, he said, "Look, you have already given me Guru Dakshina." He didn't say, "Okay, no Guru Dakshina, go away." He said, "Look, you have served me when you were in boarding school. You have served me a lot. You have done a lot of service for me. Whatever chores I asked you to do, you've done that all of those things correctly, right?" So that Vishwamitra said, "That is my Guru Dakshina." But Galavar did not agree. He said, "No, no, no, I need to give you something else," right? So you're absolutely right. The Vedas say you have to give Guru Dakshina to your Acharya. So we have to follow the Vedas. But you asked a great question, because the words of the Vedas are very important to pay attention to. Okay. So those of you who have learned the Taittiriya Upanishad, right? There is a line in this Taittiriya Upanishad, right? Which starts by saying Acharyaya, right? Acharyaya priyam dhanamahritya prajatantum vyavachetsi, right? So it says, after you finish learning, bring Guru Dakshina to your Acharya. But what the Vedas say are Acharyaya priyam dhanam. Bring Guru Dakshina that your Acharyan likes. Bring the Guru Dakshina that your Acharyan wants. So in Galavar's case, Vishwamitra said, "Your service is the Guru Dakshina. I don't want anything more." So his job, even if he was listening to the Vedas, the only thing he had to do was to say, "Okay, thank you," and go, because he had already given the Guru Dakshina that his Acharyan wants. Okay, so you cannot force something on the Acharya. If he doesn't want anything and says, you just give me bring me a glass of water, that's enough. That's all we can do. Okay, so that's a good question, but the Vedas themselves answer that question for us by using the words Acharyaya Priyam. Okay, so that is the message that Narada gave to Duryodhana. Okay, the message that Narada gave to Duryodhana and to us is that don't be obstinate. Duryodhana was saying, "I want war, I want war, I want war," right? Narada was saying, so many people are giving you advice. Take their advice and change your mind. Similarly, if Galavar had changed his mind, he wouldn't have had to run around the whole world trying to find something that did not exist. But that was
Galavar put struggle on himself.
exactly. Galavar brought that struggle upon himself. And if we, at the beginning, if we listen to our acharyas, and acharyas know best, if they tell us something, that must be right. So if we listen to them, then we can save ourselves a lot of bother. But within that story, the Shandili episode tells us a lot about how we should treat Bhagavatas. Okay, when we treat Bhagavatas, so okay, let me ask you this question. We've learned a lot about Bhagavatas and how to deal with Bhagavatas today, right? What is the one message you will take away from that Bhagavata story, from the story of Shandili, and what is the one moral of the story from there? What do you think is the most important thing? There are a lot of things that we have discussed, but what is the most important thing?
You could say that you shouldn't doubt anybody because and you should I don't know.
You should listen to your acharya.
Okay, good.
Wait, I think you should wait. I'll think real quick.
Sure, yeah. Anyone else in the meanwhile?
Never include yourself in a selfless act. He
Excellent.
wanted to go to Shandili and Shandili said and Shandili didn't agree with it to Garuda, and so Garuda included himself in that thought of selflessness.
Right. Right. So when you approach,
always be respectful to a Bhagavata.
Good. Good. Anyone else?
I have one.
Yeah.
I think it is like you should be selfless, because Garuda thought that he could he said I can do something, and same thing I forgot the name of the Shishya, but
he thought he could give a better Guru Dakshina to Sage Vishwamitra, but Sage Vishwamitra was already happy with what he had.
Perfect. Excellent. I think that you all summed it up much better than I could have. So you should be, I think the big message is when you approach your Acharyan, when you approach any Bhagavata, or when you think of any Bhagavata, when you deal with them always with humility. Okay? So ask yourself the question, whatever I'm about to say to them, whatever I'm about to think about them, is it something that comes from a position of humility? If you're humble, then you can't go wrong. Okay, and the other important message is there is no notion of seniority or being a junior when it comes to interacting with Bhagavata. Okay, Perumal loves everybody. We have no way of assessing if Perumal loves somebody more or less. We don't even know if that's the case. So, however senior we think we are, we should deal with even young kids, even when you're playing with kids, a younger kid could be a Bhagavata, so deal with them with the same humility, same respect. Okay? So that brings us to the end of the time. Sorry, we went a little bit over time today, but any other questions?
Again, Swami, so you said that Swami Desikan discussed Shandili story in which Grantha did you talk about this in?
Good. So that's a good question again. Swami Desikan talks about the Shandili Vruthantham in Srimad Rahasya Tresar. Okay, and the context in which Swami Desikan brings it up is, as you can guess, he brings it up in the context of how do we repent for our mistakes? How do we avoid making mistakes? And how do we repent for our mistakes? That's the context in which he brings it up. Okay.
Then yours.
Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you very much, all of you, for your time and attention. Srimad Rankachatari Samyamiviral Labdhagamantadvayam Srimad Veeragudvahadya Shadajit Padaravindastrayam Srimad Vedavatam Sadeshikayatehe Karunya Vikshaspadam Sede Rangabhrina Shasanavasham Narayanam Yoginam Vedanta Deshikadesha Katakshalubdha Trayantasara Manavadyagunam Budhagrim Narayanadi Iti Durya Kripabhishiktam Sri Ranganatha Iti Shekaram Ashrayamaha. Next week we have the storytelling session at the same time, 5 p.m. On Saturday. If I'm not wrong, Sri Narayana Prasad Mama is going to tell us a story next week.